Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And I have just a short piece here, and we're just going to look at Brechin and the flood defences that failed. In fact, failed quite spectacularly. Quite a lot of people have been put out of their houses because of the overflow of the Esk. It was put in 7 years ago, flood defences, and they were supposed to protect the town for virtually everything except a 1 in 200 year event. Unfortunately, it took only 7 years for that 1 in 200 year event to hit. It's unfortunate, and I've got to play fair and say you can't really blame the government for this one. They provided the money, the defences went in, and so forth. But it was an exceptional level of rainfall leading to an exceptional overflooding of the river. Nobody could have foreseen it. They built what they thought was a high enough wall, based on past flooding events. Turned out they weren't high enough. But I don't think that this is something you can lay. I think if it happened in 10 years' time, again, you couldn't blame any particular government for it. Just one of those unfortunate events. But we will take a look at it very quickly, just in passing, just to give you an idea of how bad it is in Brechin. Anyway, here goes. So SNP government faced questions over a failure of £16 million Brechin flood defences that was supposed to last 200 years. Yes, well, that's 200 years, assuming the normal course of events and the normal amounts of rain you could get, even heavy rains. But what came down over last weekend and the beginning of the week was not heavy rains. It was an absolute drenching. It was biblical. The tide came down, The flood defences in Brechin were hailed as offering protection against all but 1 in 200 years events when they were first opened 7 years ago. But the 3.8 metre high flood wall was topped by river levels of 4.4 metres, and that's the whole point. It's high. They built what would consider generally to be a high enough embankment, a high enough defence, given the previous record high. But nobody could have foreseen that. I mean, what's 3.8? That's what, 10, 11 feet? 11 feet, say? And 4.4 metres is what? Getting on for 15 feet? It's no wonder it failed. It's no use to you. A river defence is no use when it's 3 foot underwater. It's not. Doesn't matter what you've done. It wasn't high enough. That is exceptional. Anyway, the devastation in Brechin caused by Storm Babette comes just 7 years after SNP ministers opened the town's £16.3 million flood prevention scheme. It's not as though they haven't done a lot. They have done a lot. It's just nobody could foresee this, could they? The then Environmental Secretary Rosanna Cunningham said they would protect the town for generations to come. And the project, which got underway at the start of 2015, saw flood walls and embankments constructed along the river's South Esk, as well as upgrades to the drainage system and 3 underground pumping stations, and it was hailed as a 1 in 200 years standard of defence. And for 7 years it worked perfectly well. And then this happens. But you can't blame the Scottish Government for the weather. We've got to be fair. There's a lot of things we do blame them for. We can blame them for. We do blame them for. Absolutely. They get a lot of things wrong. But this isn't one of them. You can't blame them for the weather. With the scheme, while the scheme was still under construction, River Street residents had to be evacuated from their homes after Storm Frank caused flooding across the northeast of Scotland. However, by October 16, Miss Cunningham told residents the opening of this new scheme is good news for Brechin and will provide lasting protection against the sort of flooding that struck the area in the past. Well, they know it's a floody kind of town, and so they invested and they built this thing. And for 7 years, it's worked perfectly well. More than 300 properties in the Angus town were evacuated in 2022 as one of the 3 main underground pumping stations failed to start automatically. However, Angus Council said the main flood defence, which contains the South Esk River in Brechin, we're not in Wales, held. That was the thing. It's tempting because you have the Brechin beacons, and Brechin beckons the Brechin beacons isn't easy to say, and I confused myself. So I know it's Brechin. I just confused myself. However, the flood defences, which were designed for river levels of 3.8 metres, failed on Thursday when the river levels in the South Esk reached an unprecedented 4.4 metres. The previous high recorded by the Scottish Environmental Protection was 3.52 metres in November last year. So they built it, from 3.52 to, so it's a third of it, nearly a foot higher than the previous record. That you'd think would be enough. But when it's then sitting nearly a metre underwater, it's just amazing, isn't it? At one stage on Thursday, Angus Council was predicting a river level of up to 5 metres, and it urged people living by the river to evacuate their homes. Some people are still out and will maybe out forever. It's possible. It's possible that people may never be allowed back in those homes. They're so badly damaged now by the water, they may have to be knocked down. Emergency crews evacuated dozens of Brechin residents who elected to stay put overnight on Thursday and throughout Friday morning. Explaining the plan for the new flood defences, which saw the Scottish Government pay $13 million and the local authority put in the rest, Angus Council said the scheme is designed to provide protection for a 1 in 200 year level event. And that was 7 years ago, and now, of course, it's all gone. Gavin Nichol, the Scottish Conservative Council for Brechin and Edsall Ward on Angus Council, told the BBC on Sunday that the goalposts have shifted on flooding in Scotland. He said the weather conditions are changing. Probably the goalposts have shifted now, and we're going to have a look at new measures and new ways of doing it. What do you do? Dig down the rivers? Dig deeper in the rivers? That won't really help much. Stop building on floodplains. That's a big help. We have that where I live, and the people they're building new housing on these floodplains. Well, won't bother me. I'm at the top of a hill, but people at the lower end of the hill, they could be in trouble in a couple of years' time. Anyway, Justice Secretary Angela Constance, oh God help us, whose brief includes emergency response, added, with the best will in the world, the best flood defences will not give 100% protection 100% of the time. And you've got to be fair. She is absolutely right at that. There's so many things that can go wrong, and what you've seen is the worst amount of rain in such a short period of time. There really is no defence. She said what we've seen with Storm Babette is over the course of 2 days, 2 months worth of rainfall. That is exceptional. Of course it is. And that's the main point. Farmers knew Storm Babette was coming. Unfortunately, we're talking about 5 metres of water after the Esk burst its bank in Brechin. The flood walls are only 3.8 metres high. And that is why. And it is no wonder. They've tried their best. And to be honest, they built the wall higher than the previous record. By a foot higher than the previous record. And still it came. And still it came. And still it came. It was like a tsunami. An absolute torrent, and it has nowhere to go except over the flood defences. And once it's there, even if the river clears back, the flood defences work the other way, and they just keep the water inside and don't let it feed back to the river. Bad, isn't it? Absolutely awful. You've got to feel sorry for the people living there. They're sitting there and just watching their homes getting basically washed out. You do feel sorry for them, but you take your risk moving, and buying a house next to a river. It's all very pretty until it isn't. Anyway, I shall round off and I shall come up and we shall wish them well and hope they get back in and hope that not too many have lost everything. So yeah, I don't think it's something you can blame the government on this time. They did build it high enough for what they were expecting. That is just an exceptional amount. And it was just the fact, if the storm had just run through, you'd have still got a load of rain pouring down. But of course, what happens is it rushes up and then it just sits and stops because you've got this high pressure out over the North Sea. So the storm just comes up and then just sits there, it can't go anywhere, and it just drops and drops and drops everything. Never seen anything like it. And some of the pictures you saw on the news, appalling. So those poor people run up to Christmas and they're having everything taken from them. It's awful, isn't it? Anyway, wish them well. I do hope everything's okay, and we'll finish there. But we've got a lot more videos to get through if I can pull my finger out. We've certainly got another one on the COVID inquiry. I want to do a follow-up on that. So, we'll move on. Thank you for watching this one. I will speak to you later.